The phone buzzed on the marble countertop, jolting me from the quiet hum of the city outside my apartment window. I glanced at the screen, my mother's name, glowing insistently. My fingers hovered, tense, over the call button. I'd always answer her calls, but something told me this one would sting. "Hello," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, smooth, like I'd done in every boardroom meeting, every tense negotiation, every family argument I'd managed to walk away from unscathed. "Maddie, we need to talk about your wedding date," she stammered. I frowned, tightening my silk blouse at the collar. The sunlight glinting off my engagement ring caught my eye, momentarily distracting me. Then it hit me, the words she didn't fully say. "What about it?" I asked, though my pulse had already skipped. There was a long pause. Then, almost quietly, she added, "Your sister, she booked hers for the exact same day and time." I froze. The room felt suddenly smaller. The smell of my coffee, hot, bitter, turned sharp. My hands clenched the edge of the counter. Years of feeling second best, of carrying the weight of being the older sister, with little acknowledgement, flashed before me in one instant. I could hear the faint echo of her laughter, always lighter, always faster, the one that made parents swoon and friends gush. And now, she had outmaneuvered me, even on what should have been my day. I swallowed hard, forcing the calm. I had a choice: shatter, scream, crumble, or stand taller than I ever had before. I remember that evening like it was etched into my bones. I was 23, sitting cross-legged on my bedroom floor, surrounded by stacks of college applications and rejection letters. The faint scent of lavender from my grandmother's old candle still lingered in the air. My parents' voices carried through the hallway, laughing, planning, and this time, it wasn't about me. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" my mother had said earlier that week, though I had barely heard the words before brushing them off. But that night, her voice sliced through the walls of my heart with precision. "She's getting everything right and you're older. You should know better by now." I gripped a small locket my grandmother had given me the year before, a delicate gold heart with a tiny diamond in the center. She'd pressed it into my palm, eyes soft but firm. "Maddie, don't let anyone define your worth. You'll find your place. Just wait and be patient." I had stared at it then, unsure, trembling. Her words felt like both balm and challenge. The tears came anyway, hot and sudden. I remember hiding my face in my knees, shaking, while my younger sister's laughter carried from the living room. I wasn't jealous, exactly. Not entirely. I just wanted them to see me, the real me, without comparing, without reminding me I was older like it was some sort of failure. That night, I made a quiet promise. I wouldn't stay small. I wouldn't bend or shrink myself to fit someone else's expectations. I would leave this house, this constant comparison, and carve my own path, even if it meant leaving my family in the dark about who I could become. I remember walking out of my bedroom, touching the locket once more, feeling its weight as a talisman. I would fight for every inch of my own future, my own recognition, in a world where no one seemed to notice the quiet victories of an older sister. Leaving that house felt like stepping off a cliff, blindfolded, yet somehow freeing. I packed a single suitcase, the locket safely tucked inside my blouse, and boarded a bus to the city I'd always dreamed of. Every mile felt like shedding an old skin, though the lump in my throat never fully disappeared. I started with a temp job at a marketing agency, barely making rent, surviving on instant noodles and the faint hope that someday, all the effort would pay off. My mentor, Claire Donovan, noticed me almost immediately. She was in her 50s, sharp as a tack, and had this effortless way of seeing people for who they could be rather than who they were. "Maddie," she said on my second week, "you're hiding a spark. Don't let anyone snuff it out." Her confidence in me became a lifeline. Long nights followed, pitching campaigns, drafting proposals, learning to speak a language of confidence I had never fully claimed. There were moments when I cried in the bathroom after a particularly brutal client call or stared at my bank balance thinking, this isn't enough. But I kept going because, unlike at home, failure didn't carry judgment. It carried lessons. Slowly, tiny victories stacked like building blocks. My first successful campaign brought a modest bonus. Then came my first solo client, a small boutique that trusted me to rebrand their entire image. The thrill of seeing my work live, admired by strangers, was intoxicating. And yet I never posted about it online. My family didn't need to know I was thriving while they assumed I was barely scraping by. The quiet pride I carried became its own rebellion. I decorated my tiny apartment with reminders of progress, a framed first paycheck, a hand-painted canvas from a local artist, and the locket resting on my nightstand, gleaming under the soft glow of my desk lamp. Each object whispered the same truth. I could survive. I could thrive. I could be more than the older sister who was always expected to bow first. Years passed. Promotions came. Raises came. A corner office eventually replaced the cramped desk in the temp agency. Clients trusted me with bigger budgets, and my reputation silently flourished. The city skyline outside my window became a metaphor for the life I was building, towering, unapologetic, and entirely my own. And through it all, I kept the secret from my family, knowing that when the time came, revealing it would have the weight of a storm. They had underestimated me, dismissed me, and now, I would decide the terms of our reunion. The knock on my apartment door felt heavier than usual, almost ceremonial. I had rehearsed this moment in my head for years, how it would feel, what I would say, how they would look when they finally saw me. Not the girl they had dismissed, but the woman I had quietly become. I opened the door to my parents and my sister, Lila, all smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. Lila's excitement was as effervescent as ever, but now I noticed the subtle tension in her posture, the flicker of uncertainty in her gaze. Perhaps she sensed that this time, she wasn't in control. "Hi, Maddie," my father said, voice tight. We thought we'd stop by to check in before the wedding plans get hectic." I stepped aside, allowing them to enter. The apartment was a stark contrast to the modest home they had always known me in. Polished oak floors reflected soft sunlight from the large windows, elegant abstract art adorned the walls, and the corner office space gleamed with certificates, awards, and neatly stacked client portfolios. I watched them take it in. The widening eyes, the slightly slackened jaws, the instinctive shuffle of feet as if unsure where to place themselves in this new reality. I smiled softly, letting the silence stretch for just a heartbeat longer. Finally, I spoke. "Welcome to my world," I said, my voice calm, but carrying the weight of every overlooked achievement, every dismissed effort. "The company you see here, I built it. From scratch. The clients, the contracts, the campaigns, they all started because I refused to accept being second best." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's eyes darted from the awards to me, disbelief clear in the lines of his face. Lila shifted uncomfortably, the confident laughter she carried so naturally at home nowhere to be found. "I suppose you expected me to be struggling, barely making rent, living in some corner of the city unnoticed," I continued, gesturing toward the framed campaign results on the wall. "But instead, I thrived. Quietly, secretly. And every step I took for myself because no one else seemed to care if I could." Lila's lips parted, words trapped somewhere between pride, jealousy, and confusion. My mother's eyes glistened, regret creeping into their usual composure. My father's voice finally found me. "Maddie, we didn't realize." I let him trail off. This wasn't a time for excuses. This was a moment for recognition, not just of my achievements, but of the person I had become. Independent, resilient, and unshakable. I walked past them, showing the small, deliberate touches that marked my journey, my grandmother's locket on the nightstand, a handwritten journal of my milestones, the personalized gifts from colleagues who had believed in me before anyone else did. "Every piece of this life was hard-won," I said softly. "And now you see it. You see me." The room was silent again, but this time it was different. There was awe, there was guilt, and there was undeniable respect. I didn't need them to say it. Their wide eyes and hesitant glances spoke volumes. The Maddie they thought they knew was gone, and the woman standing in front of them was unstoppable. I stood in the middle of the apartment, letting the weight of the room settle around us. The silence was palpable, but this time, I held the power. No one here could diminish me. Not my parents, not Lila, not even the memory of years spent being overlooked. Listen, I began, my voice calm but unwavering. I am happy to be part of your lives, but things have to change. I will no longer be the invisible older sister, and I will not be treated as a backup plan or an afterthought. My parents' faces paled slightly, but I didn't waver. First, Lila, I said, looking at her. Your wedding plans overlapping with mine, deliberate or not, is a symptom of old patterns. You will respect my choices and schedule. A compromise isn't weakness. It's maturity. Lila's eyes flickered, a mix of guilt and defensiveness, but I pressed on. Second, I will no longer participate in family dynamics where favoritism or comparison exists. No one gets preferential treatment based on age, charm, or favoritism. We all have value, but we must recognize it honestly. Turning to my parents, I continued, you will acknowledge my achievements, not just superficially, but genuinely. That means asking, listening, and supporting my goals without judgment or assumption. I've earned everything I have through hard work, patience, and resilience. That's non-negotiable. I paused, letting the words sink in, then added, lastly, everyone here must commit to personal growth. That includes dropping toxic patterns, criticism disguised as advice, favoritism, and dismissive comments. You can support me, but on the terms that honor who I am now, not the girl I used to be. I could see the change in them already. My father straightened, a hand rubbing his temple as if waking from a long haze. My mother's lips trembled, and Lila shifted, caught between anger and understanding. I didn't expect perfection, but I expected willingness, and right now that willingness was beginning to bloom. I softened slightly, letting warmth seep through the firmness. I care about all of you, I said. I want us to be a family that celebrates each person's victories, that uplifts rather than compares, that grows together. But I will not step back into old roles just because it's comfortable for you. My life, my success, my boundaries, they are real and they are permanent. The room was quiet. For the first time, I felt the weight shift entirely in my favor. They understood that the Maddie of the past, quiet, overlooked, patient, was gone. And the Maddie standing here now was in charge of her own narrative, her own future, and yes, her own wedding day. I smiled, a quiet, powerful smile. This was not just a confrontation. It was a declaration. I was no longer invisible. I was no longer second best. And anyone who wanted to remain in my life would meet me as I am, strong, accomplished, and unafraid to demand respect. Weeks later, the tension had softened. Lila approached me, her eyes sincere for the first time in years. Maddie, I'm sorry, she said, voice trembling. I didn't think about how it would make you feel. I want to learn from you. I smiled, letting warmth thread through the remaining ache. It's not too late, I told her. We can do this differently. Together. My parents, too, had begun small changes. My father would ask thoughtful questions about my work, genuinely listening rather than offering assumptions. My mother no longer compared our successes, but celebrated them individually, often reminding me that she was proud in a way that wasn't tied to favoritism. I kept the locket from my grandmother on my bedside table, its diamond glinting in the morning sun. It had guided me through doubt, pain, and the long nights of struggle. Now it reminded me not only of survival, but of triumph, the quiet, patient kind that leaves a mark without fanfare. Looking out my window at the skyline, I realized how far I had come. I had built a life from pieces no one expected me to use. Heartbreak, rejection, underestimation. And in doing so, I had shaped a woman who was unshakable, unapologetic, and fiercely independent. The wedding day had passed differently than I imagined. Lila and I had coordinated, laughing together over shared memories, our relationship no longer defined by rivalry but by respect. My parents attended, eyes bright with recognition, and I walked through my own ceremony feeling whole, empowered, and seen. And in the quiet moments, when the music softened and the night stretched like silk, I whispered to myself, half in memory, half as affirmation, words from my grandmother that had carried me this far. You are enough.
You always have been.
And now you shine. I stood there, holding my husband's hand, a soft smile curving my lips, thinking I had been the older sister, the overlooked one, the one always expected to yield. But today I owned everything. Every struggle, every victory, every boundary set and enforced. I was Maddie Hayes, fully myself. And I was unstoppable.